I quickly realized that I had to live a different leadership style. Yeah, I was a young mother working 30 hours a week, part-time manager, and around me there were only elderly men all full-time. And yeah, so I thought, okay, I can't lose anything here, so I did my own thing. Yeah, and it worked out very, very well. And I think everybody around me observed this.
I'm very appreciative to welcome Johanna Fink as my guest today. Johanna works as a trainer and coach for part-time managers. She advises companies on how part-time leadership can be successfully implemented in the company. Previously, she worked for several years as a part-time executive in the media industry. With her work, she stands for a healthy mix of enthusiasm for the topic and pragmatism in implementation. She is able to open up new perspectives on part-time leadership for people, thus enabling innovative solutions. Johanna lives with her family in Germany. You can learn more about her on her website www.johannafink.de. Welcome to the show, Johanna.
Hey, nice to be here.
It is really nice to have you on the show today. Now, I'm curious, where are you calling in from? And what type of local special side of food can you share with our worldwide listeners?
That's a really easy question for me because I'm living near Munich, and I think everybody in the whole world knows what's happening in Munich every autumn. It's the Oktoberfest. So we have a really big event here. And yeah, you know which food you can get here. It's grilled stuff and a lot of beer. And I'm always not sure if I should be proud of living in the city of Oktoberfest, because it's really a overall of emergency thing every year. But yeah, I think it's very famous all over the world.
I completely agree. And, as you know, I grew up in Munich too. And growing up initially, obviously, I didn't realize what a big deal it was. I guess you just, go there as a child. And then when you live somewhere else and people start talking about you, like, wow, I did not realize. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious how it's going on in the next years, because it didn't take place for 2 years already now because of the pandemic. Yeah, and we will see what will happen this year.
Yeah, I can only imagine that there might be even more people than normal just to kind of catch up on the 2 years they missed out on the drinking.
Maybe, might be true. Yeah.
So now, Johanna, I am really curious. How did you get from working at a radio station to running your own company?
Yeah, it has been a long way, and I have to go back a little bit. I've done various jobs within the company, yeah, and I was always kind of looking for something and trying things out, and I experienced a lot of different managers and leadership styles, and somehow I always thought, okay, is this it? Yeah, I wasn't content with it myself, and so I think the wish starting to grow within me to try it out myself and to find my own way. So when I got pregnant with my first daughter, I initially became the offer to become a manager myself. So I think it was the worst moment ever when I had to tell my boss, okay, I would like to do it, but I'm going to have a child now. And I think the answer he gave to me was life-changing for me, because he said, okay, so when can you come back? When can you start? And I think that's very uncommon, because normally it's just unfortunate for you and someone else's luck. But in this situation, I could come back after 7 months after the birth of my daughter, which is quite early for Germany. I know there are very different standards all over the world, but for Germany, it's quite early. And so I had the chance to try it out myself. And I quickly realized that I had to live a different leadership style. Yeah, I was a young mother working 30 hours a week, part-time manager, and around me there were only elderly men all full-time. And yeah, so I thought, okay, I can't lose anything here, so I did my own thing. Yeah, and it worked out very, very well. And I think everybody around me observed this, because the team was happy, the productivity was good, the results were good, and I started to get curious, why did this work, what I did, yeah? And I think this was the start of what I'm doing today. I started to try to understand, what did I do, why did I do this? And I wanted to find out, what is the secret of successful part-time leadership?
You know, Johanna, it sounds so fascinating, because especially here in North America, part-time really often is sort of equivalent to an entry-level position. Yeah. So leading in part-time here is something that is even more unheard of than, say, job sharing or top sharing. So to me, it is really fascinating to, learn more, and how this is, has worked out for you. And now you are the host of the podcast, and translated into English, Leading in Part-Time. And so I'm really curious if you could share more with our listeners about that.
Yeah, it's a quite funny story, because it happened accidentally, I have to say. It wasn't planned. So I took part in a Working Out Loud circle last year. I don't know if it's very famous in Canada, but I think so. John Stepper is an American guy, I think,
yes,
who invented it. Yeah, and it's very famous in Germany already too. And I took part in this circle, and the idea of Working Out Loud is that you follow a personal goal in a group with other people over 12 weeks. So, and in the first session, you always have to set your goal or share your goal with your group. So, and I came to the first session, and I had no idea what my goal would be. And then we just chatted a little bit in the start of the session, beginning of the session. And we were joking around, and it was like, oh, you could do a podcast. And I said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And so I committed myself to start a podcast. It was in autumn 2021. And on the 6th of December 2021, I released the first episode. So it's a really funny thing. But jokes aside, I have noticed that there are mainly offers for mothers on my topic. Yeah, it's very common in Germany. You have a lot of mother comeback business podcast things. Yeah, and that's fine. It's a good thing, and I think it's important that these offers are there. But I think, and that's one of the problems with part-time leadership, that I have the feeling it's not going to be a common model until it stucks in this mother-mums thing corner. Yeah. And so I think for me, the idea was to create a podcast that is about part-time leadership, but which has at first nothing to do with mums. Yeah. It's not an offer for mums. And yeah, that was the idea. And that was what I did.
It is really interesting, because I feel very strongly that until we have more male role models doing flexible work, it's going to be in that mommy track corner. And so I feel we need to have many more publicly talking about role models who happen to be male, and ideally senior leaders, so people can say, this is working, this is possible, and it is possible for everybody. Yeah. And so, I'd love to find out more. I just alluded to that in North America, job sharing is already quite uncommon. So how can one do, a leadership in part-time successfully?
I think in general, I see the success factors on different levels. Yeah. first of all, there's the part-time leadership person. And I think you have to have a very strong will to do it, because it's always the easier way to do full-time regarding to the job, because it's always easier. You don't have to stress out and you don't have to do things in another way. You just can do it like everyone else. So if you don't have a really good reason for yourself, maybe children, maybe a hobby or something you want to do in this free time, then that's the first thing, your motivation. And the second thing is, I think you need to be very well organized. That's the base. But that's not all. And I think that's the point where it often goes wrong, because many people just try to realize part-time leadership with efficiency. They're just trying to work harder, do less coffee breaks and skip lunchtime. These are the mechanisms I often see. And I think that's not the way how it can work, because this is a way that makes you uncontent, and that also makes you stress out. And I think it's dangerous to become ill or to get mental problems over time. So I think we need a healthy way of part-time leadership. And this means that you have to structure your work in another way. You have to find out, okay, what are the roles, the tasks, the topics where I really bring value to my team. What are the things I do that are really important for my team, and what are things where no one realizes if it's done or not, or what are things where there are other people are maybe in your team or somewhere else who can do it better. And this is the first step to figure this out, and then to decide what things am I going to do and what am I not going to do. And learning to say no to things is one of the most important things you have to get used to when you want to be a successful part-time leader. That's what's the first level. And then you also have your organization you're working in. So you can still fail, although you are best organized, you do everything one should do. But if your organization and especially your boss doesn't support you, you will have a problem. And I think it's very important. First of all, there have to be certain framework things like technical and legal things. You have to be able to work flexible part-time. In Germany, it's a big deal. I don't know how it's in Canada or North America. In Germany, it's always, if you want to work other hours, different hours, or work in the evenings, it's a big thing for the most companies. And then you need technical equipment, which shouldn't be a problem after 2 years of pandemic, but before it really was quite often to get access company data from home and things like this. And on the other hand, I think you need a special culture which supports part-time leadership. And what I mean in German, there's a special word for it. It's called Präsenzkultur. I don't know the English expression, but it means there are cultural climates that are very focused on you being present all the time. And if you are not present, not sitting on your chair, you're not there. You're not existing and you're not productive. And I think that's one of the most important things.
The concept in English is like presenteeism, and it's exactly what you said. What you said. And I feel and hope that the pandemic to some extent has kind of reduced it, because people realized A, one can work well from home, and B, that even if you're not physically there, you can start building, a relationship. But what I'm reading more and more and talking to people is that the whole hybrid aspect, it might unfortunately potentially create presenteeism, in the sense that if you have a certain part of your employees, say, attend regularly in person versus maybe others who do not, how do you ensure that you then not have another form of presenteeism?
It's so funny because I just have to tell this story because in my team where I was a part-time manager, it was long before the pandemic, we had a very interesting concept because most of us have been working part-time and or from home. And so we only had one day per week where we all met, and all other days, some people were there, some people were here. And we really found out a lot of how we have to do it and what helps us long before the pandemic started. And when the pandemic came, for us, it was, okay, our common or our get together Thursday is not going to happen anymore. Okay, it's sad, but okay, we can go on. And for other teams in the department where I was working, I really could feel this shock of, okay, how should we work now? And it was so funny to see, because for us it was, okay, no Thursday, okay, little bit sad, but let's move on. And it was so interesting to see.
It was definitely a shock for some organizations, but then, people who have been used to working remotely, however many days, for them it was, I'm sure still a shock, as you said, but still not, you just moved along. So I think it's so interesting. Yeah. And now, in your conversations on your podcast, I'm curious, are there some findings that you find either surprising or unexpected?
Yeah, what's surprising for me is that there are many people who have no family, who don't have little children, and who want to work differently, who want to work part-time. There are men and women, and they all have different reasons why they want to do it. Yeah, there are people who say, okay, my job is so stressful. I was talking to someone who has a co-leadership with another person on a full-time, both on a full-time base, because the job would be so stressful for one person that it's much more better to do it together. So besides from part-time, these new concepts like job sharing have so many advantages. And I think they open positions to people who are not willing or not able to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And that's a very important aspect that will become more important in the future, I'm sure, because if you look at family models, or one person working 60, 70 hours a week and the other person staying at home, is a family model that is in Germany not possible anymore if you live in a city, because it's much too expensive. So you need two people working. And if you have kids involved, or if you want to have some life next to your job, you have to organize work differently. So I think there are a lot of people who have interest in flexible working models. And on the other hand, for me, it was interesting to see that there are a lot of people who are just mostly young people just saying, okay, I just want to work 4 days a week because I have a life and I have hobbies and I don't need the money. Yeah, it's a generation. It's a question of a certain generation that is coming up. And if we look on the other end of the spectrum, in Germany, we are a very old society, and we are growing older and older. And there are statistics that say, I have to lie, I think every third person will have elderly people at home in the future of whom they will have to take care for. So there will be another group of people on the other end of the spectrum. They won't be the young ones and not the middle ones with the small children. There will be the elderly ones who have to take care for their parents again. And I think all these changes in the society and the way we live will come together with these new concepts of working.
You're seeing it by looking at the different generations and talking to them. But I feel it is often still maybe undervalued, might be the wrong thing, but people just don't realize what a difference the mindset has become, I think, especially during the pandemic as well, because I think people start really thinking sort of what's the essential, what's the purpose? And then, what you said, if I can work 4 days a week and then I can do my hobby or do whatever, it also then helps that person, to have less of a mental health situation, or just gain additional knowledge from that time of the week where they are doing something else.
Yeah, and on the other hand, what's very interesting is that I often see that the topic is very much fraught with fear. Can I want this? So what happens if I do it? What's with my career? What are my friends going to say? My family? It's really interesting that people care so much still about what people are going to say. Yeah, and even if they are really unhappy with their personal situation.
In my mind, in the next 5 or 10 years, there is going to be such a change. And I imagine within maybe a friends group, or as you said, with some relatives, if one is the first person to say, I'm doing a part-time job or 4-day week job, and then maybe the first question might be, but you don't have children, you don't have, XYZ. Why are you doing it? So people might even feel the need to, give reasons why they are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we are talking about, so to speak, trailblazers who are already now working part-time or working a 4-day week, what do you think will it take to make it a more common type of career?
Yeah, I'm generally a very optimistic person, but in this subject, I'm realistic, because I think it has to hurt. It has to hurt, and companies will have to fear that they will have problems to hire skilled workers. And in many branches, you can already feel it, like technology or things, software in Germany. And I think this will happen to every company in the next 20, 30 years, because there will just not be enough people in Germany. And you can't fill this gap. And you have to rely on every skilled person on the market. And there are very, very many skilled people on the market who are not able or do not want to work full time. So I think, so I rely heavily on the shortage of skilled workers and the demographic development. And at the moment, I have the feeling that some companies would rather leave positions vacant instead of fill them with part-time workers. I think this is because companies are very aware of that part-time leadership is associated with the change of culture. And what we talked about earlier, this presentism, and I think they feel that they have to change things if they hire more people like this. And I think that's what many companies still keeps away, but this won't work on the long term.
I completely agree with you, Johanna. Like here in North America, the Great Resignation is, real. And but by the same token, if you search, like, let's say LinkedIn in North America for a part-time position beyond the entry-level position, you will not find very many at this point in time. But I feel the fact that there is now a 4-day week pilot across many companies running in the US is a great start, because I feel the more different, more flexible work models exist in a country, the more maybe additional concepts, whether that is, leading in part-time, job sharing, or, what it might be, it becomes more maybe easy to introduce because it is a more flexible mindset.
Totally. And I think it's IKEA who that recently announced that they're going to publish all leadership positions in part-time.
I think it's excellent. Yeah, I always use as an example SAP.
Yeah.
That, that's what they're doing. And then there's Zurich, UK, that saw such a huge interest increase in applications once they said, yep, all the positions could be flexible flexible work, part-time or job sharing.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it positively. I am optimistic. But now the next question is, however, how can we get more men interested in part-time work or job sharing?
Yeah, I think it's quite easy because it's just about the money. That's my opinion. I think part-time leadership, especially, is mostly a very bad deal because most part-time leaders, especially if they are not working in job sharing tandems, most part-time leaders are just earning less money than people in full-time because mostly they are, especially when they're 80% or 75%, so they just earn the less money than others and they're doing the same work. So that's just a bad deal. And that's my feeling when I'm talking to people. Women are more often saying, okay, I'm happy that my company gives me the opportunity to stay in the position. So I'm going to accept this cut of wage because that's indeed the thing. And I think more men are saying, in my experience, more men are saying, okay, I'm not going to do this. It's a bad deal. So first of all, I think we have to talk about money and we have to talk about the way how we are paying part-time positions. And there might be, or there are situations where it's fair to cut the salary, but there are also enough situations where it is not. Yeah. And you have to really give a close look and have to look, okay, how is he or she doing the part-time management position? Is he or she just doing the same job in less time? Then you have to give the full salary, the full wage. And if he or she is doing only part of the job, then it's okay to give him or her a part of the money. But I think that's one of the most important points. It's just mostly part-time leadership is a bad deal. So that's first point. And the second point is that I think we do not have very many male role models. So still I just knew a few of male persons who are working part-time in a leadership position. And I think very often for men, it's a big deal to go to his boss and say, okay, I want to work part-time. Is it okay for you? And I think it's very often that you will have a very, very uncomfortable situation afterwards. Yeah. And there will be anyone who's saying, good idea. It's cool. You are the first one. Happy for you. Normally it just will be the other way around and you maybe get bullied or something like this. So I think we need much more first movers, and then it will be easier for others to follow. I just can give an example of out of my personal life. My husband is working at a German automotive company, and he did a lot of in Germany it's called Elternzeit, parental leave. Mm-hmm. Yeah, parental leave, because I always, I have 2 kids and I always went back to work after 7 months. So he stayed at home for the same time, because in Germany we have a model where you can share 14 months. And so he had to stay at home for 7 months. And afterwards he was always also working part-time. And he wasn't the first one in his team. There was one guy before him who did it, because his wife had a very important job and there was no discussion that she's going to stay home. And it is so funny to see, because after my husband, a lot of young colleagues did the same. But the interesting thing is, the effect has only been seen in his team. It didn't spread to the whole company or the whole department, but it was in the team. You could really see it. All the young guys said, okay, my girlfriend or my wife is going to have a baby, I'm going to stay home. And it wasn't anything special anymore. Yeah.
It's so interesting how influential close circumstances or people are. And it's, one of the, like when you look at the 4-day week, if the whole organization implements it, then to your point, it's no longer, well, you're the odd one out. It's everybody. And Lasse Reingans with his, organization, where he says everybody works 5 hours a day. Again, there is, if everybody does it, then it feels far less, weird or why are you doing this? And and when you look at Norway, where, and I'm sure also other Scandinavian countries, where there are many more men taking parental leave and longer extended parental leave, again, it seems much more common. And if everybody does it, it might look even weird if one doesn't do it oneself, right?
Yeah, this should be the goal. That's the way to go for me. Mm-hmm.
And so now we've been talking a lot about part-time work, part-time leadership, and we alluded a little bit earlier. I feel that a lot of organizations or managers simply do not realize the transferable skills that a person who is working part-time is gaining from his or her other part of their life. And so, could you maybe share some examples from your own professional life, working as a leader in part-time, what you have gained?
I'm sure that I became much more flexible. I think I have 2 little kids at home, so with small kids, anything is plannable. You make a plan to throw it away 5 minutes afterwards. So I became much more flexible, and think this helped me a lot in my job, because I think, especially in these uncertain times, it's so good. It's good to have a plan, but it's much more important to be able to just throw the plan away and to say, okay, we are going to do something else, because it's important to stay flexible and just react to what's happening. I think that's something that you get with children. And the second thing is that I think children reflect your personality every day. So children are a mirror in front of you all the time, and they are just giving back everything to you. They're giving feedback to you all the time, and they are not polite. So you get very honest feedback, and I think if you manage to use this feedback and try to work on yourself, you can really profit from it, because you really gain insights into your behavior. And at home, you do not behave in the important things. You do not behave differently from work. So it's very good to use these things and try to develop yourself. I think this can always help you, because when you're in a leadership position, I think it's very important to know yourself very well and to know what you're good at and what you're bad at. And you have to know your dark spots and your sweet spots. So, and if you do this, you can work with the things, and you can work with your team, because you can have an open conversation about things, and you can really give other people the opportunity to give feedback, because you already know what you're at. Yeah?
I couldn't agree more with you. I feel, dealing with children, it definitely presents excellent way to, learn self-reflection, self-awareness, and the politeness. Yeah. It's very blunt often, but, helpful. And so now, we've talked about leading in part-time, and obviously I'm biased. I think it is an amazing thing to do. But by the same token, there will be people listening to us today, whether they are business leaders or HR leaders. And so how do they maybe, how can you convince somebody who isn't quite certain that this is the right thing? What would be sort of the most concerns about leading in part-time that you have heard about, and what could be done about it?
Yeah, I think the most concerns are availability, and it's all about, okay, what should we do if he or she isn't there, isn't available? I think that's a very important point. Sometimes it's also the costs, especially when we're talking about job sharing. If you have more than 100% on a position, it's a big deal for some companies. And I think it's also quite often the question of how to keep contact or stay in touch and stay in contact. I think the communication, how can it work when you cannot always just open the door next to you and just shout out? And I think these are the most important points. For me, it's, first of all, I think there are three things. First of all, I think it's if you respect, or if you respond to the needs of your employees, and your employees are also leadership people or managers. If you respond to their needs, and if you want to work in part-time, it's a need. You have a need because you have a personal situation or something like this. If you respond to this needs as a company, you get more motivated, more content people who are even more productive and who will stay with your company even in bad times. So I think it's a really, really important instrument, because we humans are no machines. So we don't work like here. You put some money in and you get productivity out. That's not how it works. So I think this feeling, if you work, you're telling your boss, okay, I want to reduce hours because of this or that reason. If you get a positive answer, and if you have someone in front of you who tries to find a way, then you will be very grateful to him or her. Okay, that's the first point. Yeah, the second point is part-time leadership is a very interesting instrument for development of employees, because if you have a part-time manager in your team, you have to organize work differently, and people have to work more self-organized, have to organize differently. And what I see is that you give people who maybe have not been seen before the opportunity to grow in team, because they can take over maybe little parts of the leadership tasks. Yeah. So you can give small things to them and can tell them, okay, you can find out if it works for you, and you can see people grow in the teams. And I think that's something what often doesn't happen if you have a very strong person in the leadership position. So when he or she leaves one time, you have a problem. Yeah. So you can distribute power differently in the team, and you can make people grow. That's, for me, I'm very convinced that this works, and that's one of the very important positive effects of part-time leadership. And the third thing is the easiest thing and the most important argument for most companies. It's the money. We are at a money point again. I don't know how it is in North America or Canada, but in Germany, it is so expensive to lose an employee and to find a new one, especially on skilled positions, management positions. So everything is better for the company, but losing this employee. So I think this should be enough arguments. But in reality, I also know that it's often it's much more a feeling than hard facts that count.
Thank you so much, Johanna, for sharing. This has been so helpful and so interesting to hear. And honestly, people listening to us who are dealing with the Great Resignation, this is such a beneficial conversation because every day, literally, I open, not my physical newspaper, but news on the computer, and I read, great resignation here or there, and what can we do to keep more people, to retain them, and also by the same token, attract more. And so these are wonderful, insights and new and innovative ideas on how to make this happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for having me.
And now, so we've talked a lot. I want to make sure that we've covered all the topics that you would like to share with our listeners today.
I think I don't have anything to say anymore.
And so then one last question is there a particular book that you have either recently read or that in general has influenced some of your path?
There's a book, it doesn't have to do not very much with part-time, but it's a book, it's called Thank God It's Monday. And it's a book about written from a company in Berlin. They're called Dark Horse Innovation. It's an innovation agency. And they're quite interestingly organized. And they wrote a book about how work should be, that they would like to go to work on Mondays. And this book really influenced me because I think that's one of the things I experienced in my early career, that I thought, okay, is this work? It is not fun. So why has it to be like this? And I think this book was for me an eye-opener because I understood that work has to be fun. If work isn't fun, there's something wrong.
That sounds wonderful. So I will, this is definitely coming onto my, reading list. And so, Johanna, how can people find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. On Instagram, I'm Karriere in Teilzeit. It's a quite difficult German expression. But you can also have a look on my homepage. It's www.johannafink.de.
Great. And I will also put into, the show notes, all of the links so people can find it there as well.
Thank you, Karen.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Johanna. It was such an insightful conversation.
Thank you.
Such a great episode with Johanna. As a little summary, we talked about how Johanna went from working for a radio station to being self-employed, focusing on part-time leadership. Johanna talked about what it takes to do part-time leadership successfully. We also spoke about how can more men get into part-time leadership and what kind of concerns often people have, and maybe that's why so far not that many part-time leadership positions are available around the world. I hope you enjoyed this insightful conversation and reflect on your organization, whether or not there is already part-time leadership, whether that is in the format of job sharing, co-leadership, or indeed an individual part-time leadership position. I would love to hear from you and see how these conversations have helped within your organization, or if there is an additional topic or guests that you would like to see. I would also like to give a special shout out to Samira Baumann. I heard from Samira in my weekly Future of Work walk. She shared how she has been so inspired by the podcast episodes that she decided she's going to write her thesis about job sharing, which really, really made my day, if not week. So I'd love to hear more how people are impacted by this podcast. I'd love if you wanted to send me a message, Karen Tischler at emilyspath.ca, or you could also join in the weekly Future of Work walks, which is a LinkedIn audio event It happens every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern Time for half an hour, where we talk about a broad variety of future of work topics while walking for 30 minutes. And usually these walks coincide with me presenting a little bit of a sneak preview of an upcoming podcast episode. And so we've had conversations about fathers and care, all types of flexible work, professionals returning back to paid work, transferable skills from unpaid care work, volunteering, traveling extensively, expat situations, and more. I'd love to hear you in a future episode of the Future of Work Walk. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!